Alright, come on, Twitch. Are we streaming yet? There we are. Awesome.
Have we gotten any more reviews?
Let me check real quick. I have not checked that today. I tried to look on. I know you can do some on like Stitcher and Overwatch, but not Overwatch, Overcast. And I don't know how to look up the reviews on there. I think you can do it by episode, but I'm not sure. I have to do some research on that.
Okay. Let's see.
Arcade Retro.
And I'm actually really excited to do the review tonight.
Oh, I bet. Nah, no new reviews for this week, so we'll have to push that out there.
Okay.
Let me just kind of pop that in the Google Doc there to remind ourselves. So I guess, excuse me, next week I'm not gonna do Strider. So let me. I didn't even mark it. Jackal. I'm going to be doing Jackal next week since he sent me that, or sent us that on through the mail.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and review that next week. And I hope my voice is coming through clear tonight. For some reason, my microphone settings got all messed up at some point last week. And
yeah, I saw the comment.
Yeah. And I noticed it on Pop Culture Palette too this week also. So I had to do some work on my settings. For some reason, everything got jacked up.
Interesting.
But if we're ready to go, let me just make sure this is working. Yep. There we go. All right. Are you good to go?
I am.
All right, let me pull this up so I can read it. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. This episode of the Nerd Cave Retro is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nerdcave. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
You're listening to the Nerd Cave Network.
Greetings, programs, and welcome back to the Nerd Cave Retro Show. My name is Jason Robbins.
And I'm Derek Diamond.
God, I have so much stuff to do before we start doing the program. I just remembered to shut off my ringer from my phone because I have a feeling that somebody would be calling me in the middle of the show and it would break my concentration.
Well, that's always how it happens. Yeah, you never want to be that guy who's in like a meeting or or some place where you need to shut your phone off or put it on silent, because if it rings and it's yours, everybody just turn. Yeah, God, what a jerk!
And I will always be that guy. So stuff like that always happens to me. I am that guy. So how was your week, my friend?
Pretty good. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but the Hurricane Irma, we were on like the very edge of it, so we didn't really get anything except like light rain and some wind. And we had actually really nice weather. It was nice and cool here, and now it's Mother Nature remembered this was Florida, so now it's like 90 degrees again and humid.
I know. We decided to put up the Halloween decorations today. And nothing says Halloween and nice fall weather like sweating your nards off all day long. It was so hot today. It made me angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want.
I went over to a friend's house this afternoon, and he went and took his because he's got like a 1.5-year-old son, and took him outside, just because he wanted to go outside and see the other kids playing and everything. And when he got back in, they were both pretty sweaty. So
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, it's toasty out there.
It was awful today, and you get so spoiled when you get like really nice weather for a few days, because we had really nice cool weather for about a week, and I was like, man, this is nice breeze. It was about 72 degrees outside every day, and then now today I walked outside at like 8 o'clock this morning, and it was just like instant sheen of sweat just appeared on my skin. I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
Gulf Coast weather strikes again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but how's your week been?
It's been good, man. Nothing really of note. Actually, did get something in the mail. I wanted to go ahead and read this right up front. Got a letter in the mail and a package from one of our listeners. Got an NES game called Jackal, which I've seen, and I've known about this game, my entire life, but I've never played it. It was always one of those games that it wasn't necessarily an A-list title back in the day. It was just kind of one of those games I think people just kind of had it, like that one kid in the neighborhood that had all the NES games. He would always have this type of game, But I never played it, and it's been kind of interesting playing it, because this has never really been like my kind of genre of games. But I'll get into that next week. But that was a really nice gift, and it was sent to us from, let me pull up his last name here. It was Travis Martin, and he says, and actually it's an actual paper letter. You hear that? That's a piece of paper I'm holding in my hand, kids. It's when you want to get personal with people and not just email and your Twitters and junk like that, you damn kids. Says, Dear Jason Robbins and Derek Diamond, I listen to your show every Monday morning during my delivery route. It's one of the few reasons I look forward to Mondays. I enjoy hearing your opinions and stories relating to the games I grew up with and learning about some I've never played, like Star Tropics. I grew up playing NES games like Super Mario Bros. 3, Battletoads, Legend of Zelda, Castlevania, and one of my favorite, and the enclosed game, Jackal. Jackal is a game where you control an armed jeep with the mission of rescuing your allies trapped by the enemy. It was one of my favorite games when I was young, and I think it still holds up. I hope you get a chance to play it and maybe review it on the show sometime, which I will next week. I would love to hear your opinion of it. Sincerely, Travis. And P.S., you should post a list of your game library. And actually, I was thinking about doing maybe just doing a little video to post on YouTube of my retro collection. I might do that this week. Just put it up on my Facebook or my YouTube page, where I put up all the Nerd Cave Retro videos. So look for that this week.
Awesome. And yeah, thanks again, for that awesome letter. I mean, it's cool to hear, personal stories about, your podcast makes my daily routine a little bit easier. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
It's nice to hear from people. And speaking of that, if you do want to help out this show, and we do have a sponsorship with Audible, but one of the best things you can do for this show is to go and give us a review, especially on iTunes. Or wherever you get your shows from. I don't have any new reviews to read for this week, but if you would, please go to wherever you listen to the show from. Just take a couple of minutes, give us a rating, and it doesn't even have to be long, just a sentence or two, just talking about the show. And that'll boost us up in the ratings, especially on iTunes, and get us in front of more people, because we've got pretty good listener base, and building a good community around this show, and I would like to see it continue.
Absolutely.
But on that note, let's go ahead and go into the news for this week. Derek, I'm going to let you take this one.
So our first story comes from Thrillist.com. I love that name, by the way. Nintendo is bringing back the NES Classic and boosting SNES Classic production. Mm-hmm. Even after the complete nightmare, we'll get to that. Even after the complete nightmare many experienced attempting to get Nintendo's NES Classic Edition late last year, old school gaming fans have so far faced a similarly tough time securing the company's latest retro console, the the SNES Classic, after pre-orders started in late August, unannounced, by the way. But on Tuesday, Nintendo announced two huge pieces of good news. The NES Classic is coming back, and SNES Classic production has been extended into 2018. Due to incredible demand for the SNES Classic, Nintendo said it will continue production of the console into 2018 instead of cutting off shipments at the end of the year as it had previously planned. It also promised a significant increase in stock of the Classic when it officially hit stores on September 29th. And then the NES Classic Edition they're saying that it will restart production of the mini consoles next summer, and they'll return to stores sometime after that. No specific release date has been released. So what are your thoughts?
Honestly, I believe it when I see it. I think I actually heard a pretty funny story. I don't remember what show I was listening to the other day. It was another gaming podcast I listened to. It might have been the CU podcast. They were talking about I can't remember who exactly is the head of Nintendo America. This must have been like a gangster style or Goodfellas style thing where the head of Nintendo America took a baseball bat over to Nintendo of Japan and would just like wreck the office. Just like, do you know how much money we're leaving on the table by not producing these things? Like, so many people, if they made 30 million of these things, they would sell 30 million of them easily. If you walked into Target or Walmart, what this should have happened, this was what I was expecting to see, especially for like the Christmas season, to walk into Best Buy or Target, Walmart, wherever, GameStop, wherever you get your gaming console from, you should have walked in and seen like a pyramid of NES Classic boxes right in the middle of the floor. You just walk up and you grab one. You wouldn't have to worry about if they didn't have any. They should have had them. This was a no-brainer, easy home run for Nintendo, and they effed it up royally. So, I mean, I don't know if it's too late, but I'm sure if they bump up production, people have been known to forgive Nintendo in the past. But I don't know what happened to make Nintendo change their mind about this, but hopefully whoever is in charge of all this, the head of Nintendo Japan, I don't care who, I hope they learned a very valuable lesson from this, that if people want it, you should make it. Because if people want it, they will buy it. Simple as that. They could have made $1 billion easily off of this thing, or $500 million easily, no questions asked. If they would have just had them in production, they should have known from the beginning how popular this retro gaming, mini console would be. They should have known beforehand, and to be completely tone deaf when they stopped production of them was just, it was almost insulting. A little bit. I don't know how you felt about it, but it just felt like Nintendo just didn't care. Like, they have their agenda and they're not going to listen to anybody.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing too. What they should have done was have, you walk into GameStop and they have this giant display of the classic Nintendo, box art. It says NES Classic Edition. It has a giant Nintendo logo. And then under it, you have your stack of consoles, and you just walk up, grab it. It would have immediately caught everybody's attention. Like you said, they would have made a ton of released it when they did around the holidays.
Yeah.
And it was inexpensive. It was $60 for a ton of games. I think you were paying basically like $2 for a game, which is nothing.
Yeah.
I would have not just bought, one, but that would have made a good, Christmas gift for other people I know who are retro gamers.
Exactly. I mean, $60 is nothing to pay for a console with 30 games on it.
And you pay that for a PS4 game.
Yeah, exactly. And especially,
I don't know.
And people are talking about, well, they're not going to make any money off of these things. Well, yes, they are, because especially like you look at the Super Nintendo, and maybe the getting the licenses for these games or whatever might have been pretty expensive. But I don't really think so. especially for Nintendo. But they're going to be charging $80 for the Super Nintendo, and it comes with 2 more controllers. And those controllers can't cost more than what, like a couple of bucks to make. Throw another controller in with the NES and charge another $10 for it, and you'll still get all those people that want this thing.
For sure. And I think I'd love to know what happened, like why they decided or who made the call to say, hey, we need to make more of these things. Yeah. I have the same thought process as you. Do I want to believe it? Yes. Do I believe it? I'll believe it when I go to a Target in November and I still see these things in stock.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, I think a lot of their reasoning was they thought that having the Nintendo Classic in production would probably hurt their eShop, for their whatever they call it, the Nintendo Shop or whatever. Which I don't think so. I think you're getting a complete separate group of people, because a lot of the people you're going to get with the Nintendo Classic, the NES Classic, are, people our age or older, between, I'd say, probably 30 and 50 that did play with a Nintendo when they were a kid and probably got out of gaming. They're going to see these things and be like, wow, I had one of these when I was a kid. And then they go and buy it. And they remember how much fun they had as a kid. They show their kids these games. And then they say, you know what? Nintendo's still making consoles. I'm going to go pick up that Switch. So not only are you getting people back in with the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo Classic, but those people are probably going to be more likely to go and pick up a Switch.
And even for those who don't, I don't think it necessarily hurts the eShop sales, because right now Nintendo doesn't have one.
Yeah, exactly.
The Wii U has ceased production. The Switch doesn't have one yet. So right now it's not hurting anything because it's not existent. But to your point, even those who will not buy a Switch will still see the NES like, oh, I love that thing growing up.
Yeah.
And they'll pick up the box, they'll see all the games that are on it, and that will sell them on it. So even if they're not going to buy a Switch, it's still going to sell because of people our age who grew up with that kind of stuff. And as it's been proven over the last several years, people love nostalgia. They love stuff that they grew up on because it reminds them of being a kid again. It reminds them of, simpler times, just sitting at home playing video games and not having to worry about, bills or jobs or anything like that. And so let me tell you, it would sell on nostalgia alone.
I mean, and there's probably a lot of people that are listening to this show that are 25 and under. And let me tell you, when you hit 40, you definitely, there is such a thing as a midlife crisis. I start to want things that remind me of being a kid again, because like you said, I got to wake up every morning and go to work so I can make money to pay a house note, car payment, electric bill, food. I got to take care of my cats. I have a wife, and we got to worry about all kind of bills. And for an hour a day or so, I don't want to have to think about all that stuff. I just want to sit down and do something that reminds me of being a kid again, especially retro gaming, especially firing up my Nintendo or Super Nintendo, and just for an hour or two, just forget the world, man. And that stuff becomes so important the older you get, because life, if you let it, life will crush you.
Yep.
And we need these type of things, man. So that's my argument, is they're just missing out on so much more money by just marginalizing these people,
No, I totally agree.
But we talked that to death. Let's
Yeah.
go ahead and move on. Tyler Watson, we were talking last week about we wish the Nintendo Power was still available online. Well, he sent me, and Tyler Watson's a longtime listener of the show, he sent me a link to retromags.com. Now, this link, if you go here and you sign up, and I just did it, signed up with my Facebook account, you can go on here and look up all sorts of gaming magazines from the late 80s and above, you can go on here and download like PDFs of them, and it's a pretty awesome site. I think I sent you the link to it. Did you ever take a look at it?
Yeah, I haven't signed up yet, but I have like briefly looked over the actual website, and it's pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie, and like I'm looking at it now, and I see they have Electronic Gaming Monthly, which was next to Nintendo Power. It was my favorite gaming magazine,
Yes.
so I'm for sure gonna sign up and check some of these out.
Yeah, and like I said, I really like looking at these old magazines from back in the day. So if you enjoy doing that, it just reminds me of sort of like like a subreddit or something like that, the way it's set up. So just go on here. It's retromags.com. Just wanted to kind of give them a little plug on the show here. If you're interested in looking up old gaming magazines, definitely go on here, and you can sign up real easy. Just use your Facebook account or Twitter or whatever, and you can look up old magazines. So that's pretty much just what it is. And I think they have a Patreon page that you can contribute to. They're looking for an $1,800 goal for their web hosting. So if you're interested, give these guys a couple of loose change that you have in your pocket to make this site stay up, because this is what we need right now. Something to kind of keep, this stuff alive, because without people like this, these magazines just kind of die,
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a really cool website. Everybody who's listening should check it out.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and move into this month in video game history. On September 20th of 1984, Elite, an influential wireframe 3D space trading game offering full 6 degrees of freedom and then unique open-ended design, is published by Acorn Soft. I've never heard of this before in my life. Have you?
I have not, but I will say I love the name Acorn Soft.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it sounds awesome. I'm looking at it right now. The look of it, I mean, it looks like, very early gaming graphics with the wire, like the wireframe look and everything. So
it's all vector.
Looks interesting.
Yeah, it's all vector. So I imagine this would be something sort of akin to like the original Star Wars arcade game and things of that nature.
Yeah. In September of 1987, the Master System, made by Sega, was released in Europe.
So
and we've talked about the Master System before. I personally never played one, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, I never did either. So the Master System was always one of those consoles that I had. I think I had one friend that had a Master System, and then he upgraded, on to Sega products, because he was a Sega kid, and I was always a Nintendo person. So, but the Sega products just never quite captured me when I was a kid. But I would love to go back and collect all these old consoles just to say that I have them. But I don't have the nostalgia factor for the Sega stuff like I do for Nintendo and Atari to some degree.
Yeah.
On September 23rd of 1993, Sega releases Sonic CD, which marks the first appearance of Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. I did not play this.
Yeah, Sonic CD was an interesting game because it's the classic 2D Sonic game, but there were also past and future versions of all the levels. You'd go to like a post-apocalyptic future where Dr. Robotnik's taken over and everything's polluted, and natural landscape's been replaced by metal buildings. And then you go to the past where everything's bright and green. I never beat it. It's kind of a long game, but it is pretty fun. I mean, if you like Sonic games, you'll definitely like it. And introducing, two characters who are pretty prevalent in the Sonic franchise was pretty cool as well. It had a cool anime style opening to it, so that's kind of cool.
I had a friend of mine that had the Sega CD when I was in high school, and he had like Sewer Shark and What was the one? Not the one we just talked about not too long ago. Why is my brain not working right now? But he had two titles. He had Sewer Shark and the one that had Corey Haim in it, and I don't remember the name of that game. I will look that up and come back with that next week because Wally will correct me on that. That's another
the official fact checker of the Nerd Cave Retro
It's
podcast.
another thing that happens when you get older, kids. Your brain doesn't pull up facts like it used to.
Yeah. On September 24th, 1993, Broderbund, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right,
Yes.
releases the Myst computer game, which goes on to become one of the best-selling computer games of all time. I've never heard of this game. I've mentioned before I've never really been a big PC gamer, so this completely passed me by.
This was at the height of right when I got into PCs and PC gaming, right around 92, 93. I got my first real, I had a Commodore, which is a real computer. I had a Commodore 64 when I was a kid, but then I upgraded to, I think it was a Hewlett-Packard at the time with a whopping 256 megabytes of RAM for it, which was great at the time. But I actually had, the Seventh Guest, which is very much like Myst. Which I will be reviewing next month for our horror-themed October month. And I always wanted to get Myst, but for some reason I never got it. And it just sort of, eventually slipped on by. And then to this day, I've never played it, but I know what Myst is. And I would still love to go back and play it because, I think they actually did an upgrade of it not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, let's see here. Remakes and ports of the game have been released for platforms including Sega Saturn, PlayStation, Microsoft Windows, PSP, Nintendo DS, iOS, and Android.
Yeah, it's your basic point and click 3D world. You point and click, you solve puzzles and look for clues, that type of thing. You just kind of go. It's basically the really right when they started to do open kind of 3D worlds in these games, and they were great and they looked great at the time. Seventh Guest is starting to show its age a little bit, but it still looks pretty decent. Yeah,
I'm looking at some of the screen caps, and the graphics are not terrible.
Yeah, they're actually really good, especially for the time. They were mind blowing.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and move into our mid-roll here, and I will let you talk about that for a minute, Derek.
So for you, the listeners of the Nerd Cave Retro podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Still kind of transitioning back into having somewhat of a normal schedule, so hopefully getting back into reading more books.
I can give a recommendation for this week. If you really want your money's worth when we say free, if everybody has seen the movie It, Stephen King's It, and you're interested in listening to the book itself is 44 hours long. So
Holy
you will
crap.
get, if you sign up with our code, audibletrial.com/nerdcave, go get Stephen King's It, you will get 44 hours of content for free and a 30-day free trial. If you don't pick
That's a long book.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. But definitely do that. That's definitely a great bang for your buck, as they would say. And to do that, go to audibletrial.com/nerdcave. Again, that's audibletrial.com/nerdcave for your free audiobook.
And this week we've got... Definitely a banjo, I hear.
That song is so awesome. It's so catchy and upbeat. It just makes you smile whenever you hear it.
Absolutely.
This week, I will be reviewing Banjo Kazooie originally released, developed by Rare, originally released for the Nintendo 64 game console in 1998. This was released kind of at the pinnacle of, revolutionizing 3D platforming. Mario 64 obviously preceded this and kind of set the standard for a 3D platforming game. But I'll say this, Banjo Kazooie to me took that formula and made it better. And I'll tell you some reasons why. The gameplay of it is complex, but not complex. You get to learn all types of cool moves throughout the game that involve, Kazooie, the red bird who is in Banjo's backpack. She'll shoot eggs out of her mouth. You can fly. All kinds of cool stuff. They also kind of revolutionized the collecting items in a 3D platforming game throughout different levels. I think there's 9 in this game. The primary thing you collect is jigsaw puzzle pieces that you use to solve puzzles throughout the game in the hub world of Gruntilda the Witch's Lair, so you can go to other levels and advance in the game. But you also collect music notes, tokens, these bird-like things called Jinjos. There are 5 hidden in each level, and every time you find all 5, you get a jigsaw puzzle, or a jiggy, as they call it in the game. So yeah, it kind of revolutionized, I think, collecting items and really developing and improving on that formula that Mario 64 set. And also, I think they kind of took a big step with the graphics, because in Mario 64, everything looked kind of flat.
Yeah.
But with Banjo Kazooie, and you can see in the screen cap on the Wikipedia page, they used a lot of textures.
The water effects look fantastic on this. This one screenshot I have.
Yeah, it just took everything and just improved upon it. You can see the texture in the bridge that Banjo's walking on, the water, the grass. It's one of the most fun games that I've ever played. And to give a little bit of the backstory on the story of the game, Banjo Kazooie is set in Spiral Mountain and follows the story of Banjo, a brown honey bear, and Kazooie, a female red-crested breegull who is always kept in Banjo's backpack. The game begins when a foul-tempered witch named Gruntilda learns from her cauldron that Tootie, Banjo's younger sister, is more beautiful than her. So in a jealous rage, she creates a machine that can transfer a person's level of beauty to another, which she intends to use with Banjo's sister. She abducts her from Banjo's house while he's sleeping. Kazooie eventually wakes Banjo up, and the two invade her lair and go throughout it, learning different moves along the way, going through levels that include mountains, a shipwrecked pirate-type world, a frozen mountain, a desert. One of the cooler levels, which is the last one, is called Click Clock Wood. It takes place, in the middle is this huge tree that you have to climb, and there's other, surrounding area with it. You have to go through the level 4 different times to complete it. So there's the version that is set in spring, then you have a summer version, then fall, then winter. And there are certain areas that you can only go to in certain seasons.
Oh.
So it takes a bit to go through that. As far as development of the game goes, it was made by Rare, which I've made obvious on this podcast that I'm a huge fan of. I wish they were back to where they were, when they were making games like this.
Yeah.
It actually originally started as an adventure game called Dream, which involved a kid who would go on adventures with pirates. And they actually use that as an inside joke. Because something that Rare does that I love, they have little inside jokes in their company, and they'll sometimes use those in games. Because in the sequel, Banjo-Tooie, you meet a pirate, and he mentions about him having like a dream, obviously referring to Project Dream. So little things like that were really cool. And I can't praise enough how great this game is, like on all aspects. The gameplay, the controls are tight. The music is very catchy. One of my favorite soundtracks for the Nintendo 64. It's not too short, not too long. I think the game is the perfect length. There are 9 levels that don't really take a ton of time to do. It's got great replay value. I've played through this game probably in the double digits.
Well, it said that, according to Rare, we wanted the characters to primarily appeal to younger audiences, but at the same time, give them enough humor and attitude not to discourage older players. So I think that's something that's kind of missing the last, I'd say, probably 15 years. Like, gaming has gone in such a direction of, and I hate to use this term, but a lot of the reason I don't play a lot of games these days, it feels like they're geared toward, like, dude bros, like that type of gamer, like the first person shooters and the Need for Speed and Grand Theft Auto, that type of stuff. What I really want is something that's not necessarily easy, but something that's just fun and doesn't take, like, don't get me wrong, I like games that take a long time. Like, I really want to play the new Zelda game, and I'll sink 200 hours into that game. Like, I love Skyrim. I wish I could turn my camera so you can see I have a Skyrim poster on my wall. I love Skyrim. But 9 times out of 10, I just want a game that's fun and not necessarily easy, but something that I can just kind of jump into and play and makes me feel good to play. Like, playing something like Grand Theft Auto, like, I've played those games, and when I'm done, I feel kind of angry. Like, I want something that makes me feel like I did as a kid playing Nintendo games.
Well, I think you really summed up the game perfectly, because it is that type of game. It looks like, if you look at it, it's obviously geared towards a younger audience, but because of the gameplay, because of the humor, and especially the characters, it's really a game for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think
I think that's one of its biggest appeals.
And I think that was the magic that Nintendo had, and more or less still do. But, back when I was a kid, it was like, these games were geared towards kids, but they were hard enough to be enjoyed by adults. And, it didn't rely on, like, just ultra realistic violence or anything. It's just like, if the gameplay is fun, people will play it. Doesn't matter what it is, and I miss games like this a lot. And that's really why I really want a Nintendo Switch, is because I think Nintendo still has the opportunity now to be the best, name in video gaming on the planet again. I really do.
No, I 100% agree with that. Another cool thing about Banjo Kazooie, and this was actually something that it was never fully completed, but I remember, in the really early days of the internet being like a public thing, I was reading stuff about this game all the time about, cheats and all that fun stuff. When you beat the game, if you beat it 100%, there's a post-credit scene with Banjo and Kazooie on a beach, and they've got, their drinks, their sunglasses, and they're just relaxing, having a good time. And one of the characters that you meet, who is a shaman called Mumbo Jumbo, he shows up with these photos, and they're like action photos of Banjo and Kazooie accessing hidden areas in the game, but you can only access it by playing the sequel, and that was how they officially announced the sequel, Banjo-Tooie. Well, it was introducing this concept called stop and swap. Basically, you get to a certain point in, this was what it was supposed to be in theory. When you play Banjo-Tooie, you get to a certain area that unlocks something, and what you were supposed to do is take out the cartridge and put in Banjo-Kazooie while the system is still on, hence the term stop and swap. Mm-hmm. And then you would access the hidden areas in Banjo-Kazooie. Well, due to the technology constraints of the Nintendo 64, they didn't fully they didn't fully do it. So that was kind of disappointing, but it was a really cool concept, and people talked about it on the internet, like on message boards, Banjo fan sites, for years.
I'm sure.
Like I'm talking like into like 2005, 2006. People were still talking about it.
Well, that's a really interesting concept.
Well, what they ended up doing was they would have they put these little animated Banjo Kazooie cartridges in hidden areas of Banjo Tooie. And you would just have to break them open, and then you would get those items that they displayed at the end credits of the first game. So that was kind of disappointing, but I love the concept of it. I wish they had been able to pull it off, because that was really kind of groundbreaking, even though it sounds kind of dangerous to do to your console, but it would still be a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
There's so much to love about this game, like I said earlier, and it did get a little bit of criticism for being a Mario 64 clone, but I think there's enough differences to make it stand out, and
there's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, the way I look at it is Mario 64. Yeah, you can compare it to that. But Mario 64 kind of set the standard of what a successful 3D platformer should be. So why would you not use that as a basis and then put your own twist on it?
Yeah.
I really don't think that's a bad thing. But the game, for the most part, got really high praise when it came out. It sold more than 1.8 million copies in the United States and got reviews from, let's see, Game Revolution gave it an A-, GameSpot 9.5, IGN 9.6, Nintendo Power 9.2, GamePro gave it 5 stars.
Wow.
So it got a lot of praise, and it's one of the most fun games that I've ever played. And then in 1999, Banjo Kazooie won Console Action Game of the Year, an outstanding achievement in art/graphics from the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. And then IGN awarded it overall Best Graphics of 1998, Best Texture Design of 1998, and Best Music of 1998.
Well, it seems like this title is ripe to be brought back into the modern
age.
Oh
my God. So there was a third game that was released, but it was completely different than the first two. It was called Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts for the Xbox 360. And they completely took out the fun of the game. And instead of going on adventures in various levels, you built vehicles in different levels. Like, you didn't have any of your moveset. You had to build vehicles from different parts that were in each level, and you would use those. It was an awful, awful game. I would love if they made a true Banjo Kazooie 3.
Yeah.
I would buy that. That would be one. I would pre-order it. I would pre-order a special edition if it came out, and I would pick it up day one.
And I think you're not the only one either. I mean, if Nintendo is starting to listen to us a little bit, I think there might be enough people out there like you who are in love with this game that would throw down good money for a part 3. So,
and I wish that Rare would work with Nintendo again. That they had the perfect marriage of two companies, and then Rare left to go to Microsoft, and to me, they've never been the same.
Yeah.
But if they were to do a Banjo Kazooie 3, that would be great.
Well, you never know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, maybe a lot of the people that worked on these games are no longer working for Rare, and maybe they could start another studio, and just Nintendo could license the property.
Yeah.
You don't know. I mean, they could do some dealings like that to be able to bring this back. Because I think this would be, a lot like we talked about a few weeks ago with Earthworm Jim. I think it's ripe for, an updated version. A lot of these games are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which they did release earlier this year. I can't remember the name of the company, but it involved a lot of people who worked for Rare during that time and made the original Banjo-Kazooie game, made a spiritual successor called Yooka-Laylee.
I was just about to
Instead
ask you.
instead of a
Yeah.
instead of a bear and a bird, it's a chameleon and a bat. I've briefly played it a little bit. It is very similar to Banjo Kazooie. I didn't dislike it what little I played of it, but it obviously wasn't the same.
Hmm. Well, at least
But
they tried, you know.
yeah, no, that's true. But as far as my number review of this game, I would give it a solid 8.5 to a 9.
That's not bad.
That and it's of N64 games, it's in my top 5.
Yeah.
And like all-time favorite games, it's in top 10. I'll review Banjo Tooie on another episode to kind of get there's some pros and cons to that game. There's some aspects I think where it's actually better than the first one, but some where it's not. But it's still a fun game as well. But I'll get to that in a later episode. But
I'm gonna keep my
it's
eye
definitely
open.
it's definitely one that I've been looking for. I haven't found a physical copy yet, ever since I really started, getting back into collecting retro games. But this is towards the top of my list to find it. I mean, it's on the Xbox Live Arcade for Xbox 360, but it's not the same as having the cartridge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Nothing. There's nothing better than holding that cartridge in your hand and popping it into the machine and pressing start. There's nothing like it.
And then the occasion where you have to go.
But this is actually on my list of Nintendo 64 games that I'm on the hunt for, and I'm really starting to want to collect for the Nintendo 64 because I think now is the time to really get what you want to get for the Nintendo 64, because I really do think that's going to be the next kind of retro console in the next couple of years that really people start to overpay for things for the Nintendo 64. And not only that, but it didn't have near the amount of titles that the Super Nintendo had, or the Nintendo, or even I think it had less titles than the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. I think, let me just as a real quick, let me look up how many games did the Nintendo
64 might have had more like iconic and popular games, but as far as number of games, I'm really not sure. I haven't thought of that.
There are 296 N64 games in total. Let's see. I know that the Nintendo, the regular NES, had 714 known licensed games, and that's not
Holy
counting.
crap.
Yeah. Let's see. How many did the Super Nintendo? Had 721. And let me just look up the GameCube. Oops, sorry. Let's see, 661 games for the GameCube. So it had significantly less games than all the other systems.
Yeah.
I think now's the time. If you have a Nintendo 64, now's the time. Because especially, I have a feeling that Nintendo is probably going to hold off for, I'd say probably 2020. Maybe 2021 is when Nintendo's going to release the N64 Classic. And when that
You think they'll wait that long?
I think so. For one thing, I think that controller is probably going to set it back a bit because I don't think those are cheap to make, especially if you want them to hold up, because the old ones did not hold up all that well. And that's something that a lot of people look for is Nintendo 64 controllers, because that, the stick was very prone to becoming too loose to be able to even play your games. So, that's just my opinion. I really do think it's going to be a few years before they do that. But now is the time to start collecting. And like we talked about, was it last week or week before? I really do think the bubble's starting to burst for at least the original Nintendo Entertainment System and their games. I'm seeing a lot of the prices starting to come down, especially on eBay as well. I actually picked up another game the other day. I got Shadowgate that I want to do in October because I loved that game as a kid. I actually picked it up with a the instruction book. I picked it up for like $9 on eBay. $9. I lost I lost an auction by 26 cents at the last second for a complete inbox Shadowgate. I was the high bidder up until about the last 3 seconds because I was watching it in real time on my phone, and I had $12 on it, and then I upped my bid at the last 3 minutes to $13 because nobody bid on it. And then the last second it said I lost out by 26 cents. My day was crushed.
That's the worst.
Yes, it is. Oh, and by the way, it popped in my head. The game with Dana Plato was Night Trap.
Yeah,
Night
Trap.
With Dana Plato. Why can I keep thinking of the damn podcast called Night Attack. That's why it keeps leaving my head. And then I looked up the one with Corey Haim in order to keep Wally from correcting me. That game was called Double Switch for the Sega CD. And that was the one that he had. He had that game, and he had Sewer Shark, the friend of mine in high school. So those were the two Sega CD games that I played. I never got to play the Sonic CD.
Nice.
So Wally, save your Googling for next week. I might mess up something then. But other than that, did you give the game a? Yeah, you did. You said 8.5, right? 8.5 out of 10. So that's a high praise. So I'm interested. I really want to play this game. I never got to play it back in the day. I've seen people play it. I've seen videos of this game because it's one of those games that was always on my radar for the Nintendo 64. But I'm gonna pick it up if I can find a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah, definitely pick it up if you can. You know, like I said, it's one of my all-time favorite games. And when we first decided we were going to do this show, there were a handful of games that I thought I cannot wait to talk about it, and this was one of them. So definitely pick it up if you find it.
Yes, and thank you again to Travis Martin for sending us that very nice letter, and Jackal for the Nintendo Entertainment System, which I will be reviewing it next week. And I haven't played very much of it, so I can't say anything about it right now, but I apologize if I hate it, but I don't think I will. I will try to give it the best praise I can, because like I said, that genre of games was never really my thing back then. That kind of I don't even know what you call that genre of game. Like it's not really a non-stop shooter, top-down shooter like 1942 and stuff like that. You know those type of games like Galaga, but it's that type of game. But I'll save it. I'll talk about it next week. Sorry. But other than that, is there anything you want to talk about before we go?
I don't believe so. Just, check out the Derek Diamond Experience, my solo show that I do every Thursday. That's available on all podcasting platforms everywhere. I did a fun Facebook Live Q&A this past week, and I might be doing another one this week. We'll just have to see. So you can follow the show on Facebook and on Twitter. The show page is at D Diamond Podcast. So depending on what I do for this week's show, I'll let everyone know that way.
Awesome. And definitely go check out the Pop Culture Palette, my other show, which I do with Wally Phelps and Stephanie Lombardo. Coming up this week, we're supposed to have a really cool guest, hopefully things go well. And we're going to have that guest coming in this week. If not, it'll be the week after. But I'm hoping it's this week. So go over there to pcpradio.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at PCPshow, and you can find everything right there. So, Derek, let's go ahead and play our music. If you would like to email us, you can email us at nerdcaveretro@gmail.com. You can find us at nerdcaveretro.com. We're on Instagram and Twitter at nerdcaveretro. You can follow us individually on Twitter at jpunktastic, at Derek_Diamond, and we're on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdcaveretro. So, Derek, tell them what it's all about.
May the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.
Yes.
You've been listening to a Nerd Cave Network production.
All right. Well, Twitch viewers, thank you for joining. And also, those of you who will be watching this on YouTube later this week, thank you so much. And we will see you next week right here at 7:30 p.m. in the Central Time.
Bye.
Bye.